Good to be joined by Brandon Gill of Texas, fresh out of yet another round of boxing matches on Smithsonian reform and also a brand new bill to introduce. Well, you don't stop, do you, man?
We try not to. There's a lot of work to do. The people sent us up here to save the country.
Well, one of these things that I don't really hear talked about a lot on the coast, but obviously matters a lot to those in the middle of the country, are all of these semi-drivers who don't speak English, who are transporting tons of cargo on our roads, or they're in office or in business. They don't communicate the language. It's a huge safety hazard. You've introduced the English Language Proficiency Act to rescind English proficiency and civics examination exemptions and exceptions from U.S. naturalization law.
Yeah, so first of all, you can start at first principles, which is that a common language is what binds a country together more than almost anything else. In other words,
right.
If you can't communicate with your neighbor, can you really have deep civic bonds or civic ties with each other? It's obviously very difficult. So a common language, the English language, is and should be a core part of being an American. But unfortunately, under current law, there are certain exemptions of the English language requirement. So if you're above 55 or 60 and you've been in the country for between 15 and 20 years, depending on your age, then you can be exempt from this requirement. And what my bill does is simply rescinds that exemption, just to ensure that if you're going to become a naturalized citizen of this country, you can actually engage and you can actually be a part of the body politic and not remain sort of in many ways a foreigner on American soil.
So along that line of foreigners on American soil, again, this is a common sense thing that a lot of the country keeps asking, why weren't we already doing these kinds of things? That brings us over to the Save America Act. I can't count how many times that you and your colleagues have now passed a version of the Save America Act out of the House. Do you think that at this point, your very simple rescinding of an exemption here on language proficiency, do you think that it's going to kind of suffer the same, let's not get too hastiness of some Republicans and Democrats in the Senate? What are you seeing kind of in the future of that? And what's it going to take for that whole boil to pop?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of good legislation that we'd like to get through, both the House and the Senate. I think that we've got some mechanisms to get at least as much of the Save America Act done as possible before the midterms, which I think is a great thing for us to be doing. I'm going to continue pushing both the Save America Act and the English Language Proficiency Act. And I think that these are common sense bills that the vast majority of our country should agree with. I'm not really sure why there would be any real good faith opposition to either one.
So if we actually take a look at some of the other opposition, out here, this kind of brings me over to the legacy reforms that people sent you to Congress to begin. Some of these institutions, I'm a former educator, a former science teacher, actually. And so I'm very well acquainted with the Smithsonian and the way that they have changed a lot of their operational procedures in the last 25 to 30 years. I know that you've been doing a lot of hearings. I know my colleague over, Mike Gonzalez at the Heritage Foundation, he's done a lot of testifying to kind of the rot in the underbelly of these federally funded institutions. How is that process of reform going? And what are you finding now that we're not just kind of peeking in the windows from the outside, but actually getting a look at the foundation?
Yeah, we just got out of our first hearing on this. And this is something that the White House has done really, really good work on. And the reality is that the Smithsonian institution has been transformed really over the past decade or so and has been just steeped in far left Marxist ideas. And you see that throughout the exhibitions that they promote. You see an exhibition with transgenders wearing bondage gear, again, in the Museum of American History.
You don't want to see that when you're walking with your kids through a museum? I'm shocked.
No, and that's the thing. Normal people don't want to see this kind of stuff, certainly not whenever you're around children. But you also see all kinds of DEI infused into the organization, promoting people who are, the transgender Guatemalan whoever over promoting the founding fathers of this country. promoting and insinuating that illegal aliens should have the right to vote in American elections. You see exhibits that do that. You see them trying to stop Americans from using terms like illegal aliens and instead use undocumented citizens. I mean, you can really go on and on and on, but it's not just the exhibits, it's their civic engagement as well in some of the publications that they've put out, where the Smithsonian Institution has promoted illegal alien activists who are explicitly working to change elections in the United States. They tried to shift or move a sheriff's race just a few years ago, and the Smithsonian Institution highlighted them as, participants in American democracy. I mean, this kind of stuff is insane. And this is the stuff that the American people are so sick of, seeing what should be an institution that, really promotes the grandeur of the greatest country in the world, in fact, being one that actively works against American values and promotes a moral system that so many Americans find repugnant.
I mean, the repugnance is all throughout it. I'm trying to imagine the same people who just complained that the UFC event at the White House for the 250th was somehow super duper Trumpian and it was just a campaign rally. Oh, the terrible, the pearl clutching. And yet when you have federally funded institutions which are doing part of their civic engagement, whether that's the Smithsonian, the National Atmospheric Oceanic Administration, those who have civic engagement sections of their agencies that are meant to engage the civilians of the United States so that for accountability, for education, for showing you where your tax dollars are going, using that to weigh in and advertise activism on the far left and even, again, foreigner influence in the country. It's insane. Hearing you say that to me, I can't imagine shifting a race as being a core part of the Smithsonian's aims here. What did they say when you asked them about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's that they've explicitly moved the organization in the direction of social justice.
No accidents.
Looking at history through the lens of social justice as an activist lens, that we are active participants in history.
If you're not an activist, then you're not a true citizen or whatever, which is just nonsense.
That's right. And it is genuinely insane. But, you also see them promoting all the same kind of woke ideas that every institution, in the early 2020s was pushing. So I got to ask Ms. Director Hardig, who's the director of the National Museum of American History today, basic questions about some of the stuff that they had been promoting. One of them was they had this toolkit. It was an anti-racist toolkit. And as part of it stipulated the different components of a white supremacist culture. And among those components are politeness and
being on time.
Being on time and adherence to objectivity. So I just asked her if she believes that the goal of history should be to be objective, and she ultimately said yes. So I asked her if that's if her goal then, according to her own materials, is to promote a white supremacist culture. And I think, according to her own materials, it is.
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is
I can show you the passage right here. Yes, under your leadership, it has been used as a reference. Is Mickey Mouse racist?
Mickey Mouse is not racist.
It's not racist. According to the Smithsonian Institution, one of your exhibits referenced Mickey Mouse as representing, quote, vestiges of longstanding traditions of blackface minstrelsy. Would you describe that as racist?
No, the historical trajectory of the origins of Mickey Mouse tie directly
so Mickey Mouse is rooted in racism. Is that your testimony?
No, sir, it's rooted in minstrelsy.
Minstrelsy, you don't think that blackface minstrelsy is racist?
It had certain obvious racial overtones that have been well documented.
Do you think that that's problematic, that Mickey Mouse also has those racial overtones?
It's not for me to determine what's problematic. It's determined to me what's accurate.
Is that right?
I'll never forget when I was in, again, a science administrator writing curriculum for Indianapolis, and I was told that I had to use that particular toolkit. So as a former guy who had to be confronted with that, thanks for taking the scalpel to it today in the committee. Representative Brandon Gill of Texas 26th, appreciate the work that you do. Also, he's in our documentary Sacred Honor for our 250th anniversary as a country. Thanks for your appearance in that as well.
Yep. Thanks for having me.